Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined in studio by Mr. Sean Keenan.
Heidi is also a daywalker.
At least that's the only day walking she's doing at that time. That's almost a joke. And of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and where can I find one of those leather coats with a pocket for my sword?
We all need those sword pockets. I think that's an add-on that you can get mostly at Eddie Bauer stores.
You know, you can put an umbrella back there, too.
You add about $20 onto that. We'll sew a little sword pocket on, and you're all set to go.
Sword pocket.
It's ridiculous. Today we're going to be talking about Blade 2 from 2002. You think they planned that? No, probably not. So a lot of people have been interested. We got an email talking about how someone is excited for our review of Blade 2. I don't know if you guys have seen Blade 2 in a long time, but I think we're going to have a very interesting discussion on today's show. Let's go ahead and... Oh, geez. I'm hitting stuff all over the place here.
What was that?
It's amateur hour.
What was that?
It's just the thing that holds the mic. It's the boom. Mic boom. Boom. Let's get down to it, gentlemen. We don't have any new iTunes reviews out, but if you just head on down there to the iTunes, drop us a 5-star review, a.k.a. Humdinger.
Humdinger.
And we'd really appreciate that. It helps the show kind of get out there. And if you reached us from the Preacher Podcast, welcome and hello.
And give us a 5-star review on the HMP. Become an HMPer, son.
Do it.
HMP.
Sean just had a stroke. I don't know if you guys know. We're going to need to end the show.
You
and
gave
call
him coffee again.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
well,
admit it. You gave him coffee.
I am overly caffeinated.
I
for
know
sure.
I'm not supposed to do it, but sometimes you do. Which you're just like, it'll. What harm will it do? Oh, he's dying.
He's such a Dickens. He's a little Dickens.
He's running all over the place. His pants are off. I don't know why. He just does what he does, and we can't help it.
Talk about sword pockets.
Ladies.
I don't even know where to go with that. Let's go.
Just let it ride, buddy.
Yeah, we
let
do.
It ride.
Sometimes you just gotta moving on. So we don't get a ton of emails, but when we get them, by George, we're going to be reading them on the air here, and you can email us heromoviepodcast@gmail.com. And
Where is that? Where is that HMP podcast?
Heromoviepodcast@gmail.com.
Heromoviepodcast@gmail.com.
What did I say?
No, is that what it is?
That's what the email address is.
That is what it is.
It's heromoviepodcast@gmail.com.
Right.
Okay, I was hearing it wrong for some reason.
I know it's just like maybe I had the stroke and maybe I'm saying it wrong and I'm going, are these words I'm saying? Oh crap!
No, I think that you did say heromoviepodcast@gmail.com.
Okay, so for those of you keeping score, heromoviepodcast@gmail.com.
And that's our Hero Movie Podcast bit,
Well,
everybody.
goodbye, everybody. This is going to be a goofy episode, man. This one is from a longtime listener, an HMPer in his own right, Marty. And it reads, it's entitled "Spectacular and Amazing Show." Hey guys, just had to say, what a great show that Spider-Man episode was. In classic style, I was chatting along, adding my own comments, and agreeing or disagreeing with your comments. Come on, you didn't disagree with anything we said. You know you did. Such a fun show. One of my favorites is I'm a huge Spidey fan and Raimi fan, and remember geeking out when I saw this in the cinema. Yet again, oh my God, best film like ever. I really think he's saying that. I do remember seeing the Twin Towers trailer / image somewhere too. In my opinion, Kirsten Dunst was not too bad in this film, but just became a grumpy old nagging girlfriend in the next two films. That much is very true.
Both on and off the set.
Yeah. I have to disagree with one of your comments. Can't remember who said it. I think it's Bruce, by the way.
Impossible.
But it is impossible. But mentioned MJ as the girl next door. I always remember her being a knockout in the comics. Defend yourself, Bruce.
Well, she does go on to work as a model, but part of the initial appeal is she is quite literally the girl next door, the redhead, the all-American sweetie that you couldn't help but have a crush on.
So you're thinking more literal, not figurative. Okay.
No, and figurative. I think she's supposed to, even though she did work as a model and an actress, I think they were going for something different from Gwen Stacy, who was like 60s go-go dancer knockout.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one could say the same thing about Kirsten Dunst.
Boom, boom, boom.
So maybe she is perfect for the role.
Hey, who would ever hire her as a model?
Well, you did notice she was working in a diner, so somebody agreed with me.
He goes on. Aunt May and Uncle Ben, perfect May's monologue in Spidey 2 when cleaning the garage still has me in tears every time. And Goblin, just brilliantly crazy, although I'm sure Nick Cage would have done an equally mad job. By the way, if you ever do Spidey 2, I hope you'll be mentioning Alex Ross's art montage at the opening sequence. Just perfect. And on top of this, Blade 2 next week, i.e. this week. Another one of my favorite films. Wonder how it holds up since the last time I saw it years ago. Marty, we may be discussing that.
Get ready, Marty.
Guys, this is important, guys. Mm-hmm. Guys, I also need your help in dragging Evie back into HMP as she's been flagging along the way, as she just doesn't have the same nostalgia that we all do for these quote-unquote older films we love. Give her a telling off. As always, thanks for the whole host of shows you guys do, and look forward to seeing the three of you at the end of the year YouTube routine, the dance-off scene from Spidey 3. I don't think that's going to be happening.
Okay, so... here's my advice. Marty's the parent of Evie, not us.
Closing it out here. Later Holmes/Bros/fam, as the kids say.
Oh, I love it, Marty.
Go ahead.
Deep cut, Marty. Thank you.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I was going to say he's the dad, so he's got to be the one to drag her back in. And what I would recommend is just order, like, I don't know, maybe a gross of Girl Scout cookies, and she's only allowed to eat them while listening to HMP.
I'm a Samoa's fan myself.
Oh, who isn't, man? Those things are the best.
But you got to call them something else now because apparently that's racist. I don't know.
I call them Scooby Snacks ever since I was a kid.
That's just because you're on drugs.
So let me do it, okay? So Evie's is closer to my kid's age, although my daughters are both older than Evie is. So Marty, here's my advice for you, okay? Have her listen to this part starting right now. Evie, if you want to really attack your dad, get to know what his stuff is and break it down so you can prove to him that the stuff you like is better than the stuff that he likes from his generation. Because as everyone knows, the new stuff is always better, always than the old stuff. I mean, it's the way it was for me. It's the way it is with my kids now. K-pop, way better than the hip-hop I listened to when I was in high school. That's how you do it. And so you can go, wait a minute, Dad, are you trying to tell me that Raimi's Spider-Man is better than Spider-Man in Captain America Civil War? And then just watch his head explode. That's how you beat a parent there.
You look at them and just make them feel like they're just old, decrepit, and out of touch, man.
My kids try all the time.
And then
or you can just sit down next to him and say, Dad, I want to get into stuff that you like, so let's watch Matlock.
Let's get your tea. Let's sit you over here. Get you a little biscuit. You'll be fine.
There's no way that old English people listen to or watch Matlock. There's no way. They have their own English equivalent to Matlock. It's not going to be Miss Marple's, although that's exactly where I want to go. It's going to be something. It's going to be something close to that, though.
What is your Matlock equivalent? We got to know that. So
how about you email us, Marty, at heromoviepodcast@gmail.com.
See, he got it right that time.
And then also, I'll dare say that in the Midlands in England, where Marty lives, that tea is not necessarily a drink for the elderly either.
I don't even know where to go with that.
Tea's like coffee. You know, everybody drinks tea.
Oh, he needs just like hot water with lemon. Is that what you're saying?
More like it,
we don't want nothing to upset the system, and a little bit of Earl Grey might just put him for a loop.
He has confessed to me that he has a bit of a tea problem. Maybe drinks a little too much tea.
I've got a Mr. T problem.
Oh, yeah.
I pity that fool.
He won't leave my house.
I thought Mr. Keenan would like me to stay up in his domicile for at least 6 to 8 months. After a week, he got really, really peeved and tried to kick me out.
Say, woman, why don't you be with a real man?
You just got to call up George Papard to give him some of that flying medicine that makes him pass out. Take him out of the house.
Okay, I want everybody to stop for 2 seconds and realize what other podcast you're going to listen to this week that has a George Papard reference. My guess is probably zero. Unless you listen to like Mr. T Weekly. I don't know what you do with your life. Let's get into it, gentlemen. Here is the trailer for Blade 2.
There's a world beyond the one we know, where the powers of darkness fear nothing but one man.
represent the ruling body of the vampire nation. They're offering you a truce. They want to meet with you.
You sure about this?
They'll take us in deeper than we've ever been.
Now, those he has sworn to kill need his help to fight a new breed of terror.
They're no longer top of the food chain.
Our forces are ready to fight, but we need a leader.
Let me get this right. You want me to hunt them. For you?
Ooh, so exciting. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Keep your friends close. Keep your enemies closer.
Here I am, Blade. Wesley Snipes.
Not know who you are.
Blade 2.
All right, that was the trailer for Blade 2, our retro review of this week. IMDb plotline. As we know, IMDb always 100% correct in everything they say and or do. Blade forms an uneasy alliance with the Vampire Council in order to combat Reapers who are feeding on vampires. This is directed by Guillermo del Toro and written by H&P favorite David S. Goyer.
Oh, boy.
Starring Wesley Snipes, Chris Christopherson, Ron Perlman, Norman Reedus, and for some weird reason, Donnie Yen. I want to get into that in a moment.
Yeah, glam rock Donnie Yen is in this movie.
Oh, boy. So back in 2002, we were all, I think we talked about it way back when on HMP. We reviewed Blade. I think we all,
Episode 7.
Wow, all the way back then. That was one of the...
Wow, that was a while back.
A good while back. I think that was probably like, 2 or 3 for Stallone Connection even. So that was
It's pretty close to that.
fairly early on with that one even. So but yeah, so we kind of, I think we okayed that overall. I don't think anybody was kind of blown away by it.
We were like, hey, this is okay, but a little disappointed.
Yeah.
We remembered it better.
And I think it might have gotten just a little bit of bonus credit for coming around at the time it came around, when there really hadn't been anything kind of like it. And there definitely hadn't been anything terribly successful at the box office from Marvel. But between Blade 1 and Blade 2, we had an X-Men movie and a Spider-Man movie. So things were a little different by the time Blade 2 came around.
Yeah, just a touch here. But, I mean, as Marty said in his email, it'd been a long time since I'd seen this thing. I remember back finally at this. I was just like, man, I can't wait till we do Blade 2 and we'll be able to talk about how much better of a movie that was than the first Blade. Because, man, did I remember it being better.
So my suggestion is this: after Bruce does his comic book connection to this, we start with what we liked about it, because I can go on for hours and hours about the other side of this thing.
All right.
But there are a few good things to this movie.
Oh, of course. Well, let's find out, because we've done, like I said, we've done this before. We've had a comic book connection previously. Bruce, what do you have for us in the comic book connection this week, sir?
Well, Blade fought scientifically created vampire Morbius in Adventure into Fear number 24, and I think that may be the closest anything in the comics ever got to this movie, unless you count the Marvel comic Blade 2 Blood Hunt, the official comic adaptation written by David S. Goyer, which I haven't read.
Which is the full title, actually, which is weird for it to be all on the same opening thing, but it's all right there.
Well, I haven't read it because it's the official comic book adaptation, and it's written by David Goyer.
Oh, my gosh.
So, yes, folks, Goyer is not just an incompetent screenwriter, but he's also an incompetent comic book writer as well. And though we haven't yet covered the third Blade movie, all reports are that he's also a pretty good incompetent director. But I digress. When Blade left his former ally, Rachel Van Helsing, behind and went to New York to team up with Spider-Man and battle the aforementioned Morbius, Blade was bitten by Morbius and received a power-up. You see, Blade's original origin story, being born unto a mother that had been bitten while pregnant, well, that only made him immune to vampire bites. He had no other powers. But once bitten by Morbius, he gained all the attributes that led to him being known as the Daywalker. I think that this was important because without this contrivance, any pregnant lady would only have to be bitten by a vampire to give us another Blade. So this two-hit scenario made anyone else emerging with Blade's attributes far less likely. Now, too bad Goyer didn't understand the subtle importance of this. S.H.I.E.L.D. sought to use Blade's blood for Project Silvereye, an attempt at cloning vampire operatives, but Blade and the vampire hunting twins Moshe and Mikado shut this project down. Now, let's get back to Morbius for a minute, also known as the living vampire. Now, Dr. Michael Morbius was a Nobel Prize-winning biochemist who had attempted to cure himself of a rare blood disease with an experimental treatment involving vampire bats and electroshock therapy, because whenever I'm feeling under the weather, I often forego Tylenol and jump straight to Grandma's old bats and shocks home remedy.
Yeah.
Well, as a surprise to probably no one, this experimental therapy left Morbius in a far worse condition than when he started. Pseudo-vampirism. It mimicked the powers and bloodthirst of legendary vampirism. Morbius now had to digest blood in order to survive, and he had a strong aversion to light. He gained the ability to fly as well as superhuman strength, speed, and healing abilities. His appearance, already ugly before he became the vampire, became hideous. His canine teeth extended into fangs, his nose got real flat and looked like a bat's nose, and his skin became chalk white. I think Morbius had pretty cool imagery and story, and though he was originally a Spider-Man villain, it was inevitable that he would come into conflict with Blade. Also, somehow Morbius was responsible for turning John Jameson into Man-Wolf, not to be confused with Werewolf by Night or Warwolf, because you just can't have enough werewolves in the comics.
Or Wolfman.
Yeah.
Or Marv Wolfman,
eventually, Marv Wolfman. I got you.
Yeah,
now,
him too.
Eventually, Morbius was transitioned from villain to anti-hero in the Marvel Comics, but he never seemed to have the following or name recognition to get his own movie. I know that New Line probably didn't have the rights to Morbius, but studios have never shied away from borrowing heavily from IP owned by others. I think take a few notes from Morbius and Blade 2, and it might have been an improvement over the story we got. Imagine Nomak as self-created, not a test tube baby. He bites Blade, and Blade gets a power-up halfway through the movie. Eventually, Blade and Nomak team up to take down Dracula at the end, because why can't we just have Dracula instead of this guy with an unpronounceable name? And then they have an uneasy tolerance for each other at the end of the movie, not unlike Daredevil and Punisher at the end of Daredevil Season 2. But not all hope is lost. I'm pretty sure Blade's rights have reverted to Marvel Studios, and Marvel Studios typically doesn't collaborate with Goyer. So maybe a Netflix series with Blade and Morbius will arrive to us someday. Maybe they'll find a new way to tell the old story of a vampire and a vampire hunter becoming friends, or maybe even lovers in the vein of Twilight.
I want to get this right out of the way. Wesley, it's over. Stop pining over for Blade. You ain't gonna play Blade no more. You are. Let's look at the IMDb.
He's got to be in his 50s.
53-year-old man.
Yeah.
You know what? Just go lobby for Major League 4.
Look, I'd watch a Major League 4 before I'd watch him in another Blade film, I do believe.
Major League Back to Basics.
Back to back.
So here's the I got two things to say. One is that this is what I love about old comic books and the way old comic books were written, is that Michael Morpheus, not only is he a damn good doctor, he has to be a prize-winning doctor. Like, they can't just make him a doctor. He has to win prizes.
I've just received an accolade here.
It's so great about the old way that they used to write comic books. I love them so much.
We got to distinguish from all these other like so-and-so scientists and stuff. Look, I know you went to college for 68 years. You're really studying. You know this stuff. But have you won any prizes?
I've got my Nobel Prize right here in vampirism. I won the Nobel for vampirism.
I got the no prize for vampire stuff.
So
I don't know.
So there's one thing. My second thing is a question for you, Mr. Bruce Leslie.
Uh-oh.
No, it's a good one.
Okay.
So let's say you hear that a movie is being made about the Leslie-verse.
Okay, I'm into this.
All right. Would you prefer that there is no movie adaptation of the Leslie-verse, or there is a Leslie-verse, but it's completely written by David Goyer?
Ooh.
Oh man.
Huh?
You know how to give me that Sophie's choice, don't you? That is the double-edged sword. I'll tell you what. I would go for it. Goyer could write it as long as I got to do a commentary track on the Blu-ray release. I'd be good with it.
Here's where this Joker got it wrong.
I told him Little Still could not be played by Shaquille O'Neal. It had to be Emmanuel Lewis or else it's just still. But did he listen to me? No.
Look, people don't want Emmanuel Lewis. They want Shaquille. So we put him in there.
It's just Steel again. Why call him Lil Steel? It's just Steel.
What you guys?
You know how
don't
hard it was to
understand.
find a bunch of 8-foot actors to put around him?
There's a lot of weird forced perspective stuff going on to make him look tiny. People are like, what? Like new listeners are like, what is this? What Little Steel? What the? You got to go back to the episodes, man. That's why it pays to be a longtime HMP fan.
And I could see Goyer saying, I like this character you've got, this Constantine, but instead of a teenager, let's make him like 40 years old and kind of cranky, smoking a lot. Take off the sunglasses. He would miss the point.
Guy in a bear suit. Does he need to have a bear suit?
How about he just has a bear tattoo behind his ear?
Frankly, I'm surprised Norman Reedus wasn't Morbius in this thing. I mean, for all what Goyer tends to do. I just call him that. It's got nothing to do with that other than that's the name we're throwing in there. No, we name him after Scud the Disposable Assassin.
Yeah, that was surprising to me that his name is Scud in the movie. So I guess I'll start here because there are a few good things about this movie. Everyone's busy slapping Marvel on the back on how they're integrating characters that are black and there's ladies in it now in the Marvel universe and blah, blah, blah. Well, Blade was doing that in 2002. Mm-hmm. This is the most international-looking cast you could possibly have. Your lead is Wesley Snipes. You've got an Indian lady as the semi-romantic lead in this movie. Kind of, yeah. You've got glam rock Donnie Yen in this movie. You've got Eastern Europeans. You've got like Jamaicans. You've got
white trash Norman Reedus.
That's right. You've got Norman Reedus when he was still washing his hair in this movie.
And you might potentially have the last living Neanderthal in Ron Perlman.
I agree. They shaved the Geico caveman down and they made
climbed out of the primordial ooze and said action,
and they made Ron Perlman.
But yeah, it's absolutely true. They made this was a Benetton ad of Marvel movies for sure.
Completely, and they did it in 2002. That is one of that was one of the striking things about this movie. Because that's the other thing about the Fast and the Furious movies that I really like is the Fast and the Furious have, it is a wide spread.
That's why they're so darn successful. They cover all the quadrants, man.
Yeah, and that's not to say that they're just covering quadrants in this movie. I think that they literally were just like, Del Toro was like, I want to see a bunch of different looking people in this movie.
Well, and I think it also helps Del Toro not just being, the standard white guy that they have to direct these movies. I mean, which is by and large the case.
Yeah.
We have a Mexican director who comes in and says, "Hey, look, I want everybody to be in this." I mean, he was in Ron Perlman was in his other movies and stuff, so he's like, "Hey, we're going to throw him in there, and we're going to throw in Reedus and a bunch of people that he had kind of dealt with previously and stuff." And it's just like, hey, I'm gonna, pile it up, make it all different. And it as far as casting goes, I can't really poo-poo the casting too much because it's none of this movie's their fault.
No, well, there is one exception to that, and we'll get into that because I find that I'm actually getting like hotter and hotter when I start thinking about it. So, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But to keep with the good stuff, one of the other things that I like about this movie is that the action is shot really well. Del Toro does a very good job for something this actiony because I don't remember him shooting action much before this movie.
Not a ton. I mean, this was like
did he shoot much of anything before this movie that I'd be familiar with?
Probably not that you'd be familiar with, but I mean, he'd done a couple other things. He'd done like Kronos and things like that kind of previously, which were nobody had much seen him here at that point.
Yeah.
Because this is the earliest credit that I think I recognized.
Well,
I hadn't seen a lot of his Spanish language movies, even that he's made after this. Other than Pan's Labyrinth. So
yeah, you saw probably Mimic. Everybody saw that.
Yeah, everybody saw Mimic,
and that was a movie that
I did see.
That was really kind of taken away from him in a lot of senses and stuff, and it really wasn't. that's not a Del Toro movie per se, because it's just had so many other different hands in it to really kind of screw what he was trying to do up, and CGI was just really not functioning properly at that point.
And I will say one thing I like about Del Toro and everything that I've seen that he's had a hand in is I like his imagery, his character designs. Sometimes there are limitations with the budget and the CGI to make it look the way he envisions it, but you can tell there's a cool concept there. I really like what he did with these Reapers, sort of the next generation vampires, the way their chins split and it looked like something out of Aliens or something. You know what I mean? I like that look to it. I love the way that the old vampire kind of looks. I just like the looks of the vampire ninjas, like the almost steampunk look to those vampire ninjas at the beginning of the movie. So I think he always has really interesting visual components.
Well, and that's one of the big things about this movie that really sticks out, that really tells you it's a Del Toro movie, is the styling of it. And he is always a guy who has his hands all over the design aspect of all of his films. Yeah. And you can watch this thing, if you didn't know that this was his movie, by some of the art and stuff that you could just see, you'd know, oh, this is a Del Toro movie, because that's so his style for everything, and he does do a great job at that stuff. Yeah.
Other than even, of course, Ron Perlman's in it, but there are some other moments too where I feel like he's kind of trying stuff out to see how well it looks on the screen before he puts similar components into Hellboy, which might have been his next movie.
Well, that's what I said before we started this show, is that it really seems like he took Blade 2 so that he could make the movie he wants to make, which is Hellboy. There's so many things in this movie where just over and over again you're like, he made that better in Hellboy. He made that better in Hellboy.
Yeah, and it was his next movie right after this one, so it was basically, it was kind of the proving grounds for what he did. And this movie, it made decent money here. I think it had like a $50 million budget, made 80, somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't know what it made, on foreign box office, but domestically. So it made him enough money, and like I said, at the time, this movie got tons of praise. People love this movie, and but looking back at it now, it is a 2002 movie if there ever was one.
Yeah.
There's the weird thing with this movie too, where because I don't remember thinking while I was watching this movie originally, wow, Blade's really, really cool. Do you remember thinking that he was cool?
I think I did. But maybe it was more like in 98 than in 2002. But I remember just the concept of Blade was always, it seemed a little blaxploitation in the comics before the movies came out. Mm-hmm. And then the way they really gave him the, I'll just call it that Matrix makeover. Mm-hmm. I really thought that they took a sort of hokey character, the way that Luke Cage has been remade in the past 20 years. I just really liked it that they kind of took a different direction than the old Gene Colan version of a black character in comics.
I just hope at some point in this September, Luke Cage will be wearing a tiara for at least half a second, just so we can kind of have a little chuckle he throws away. He goes, "Get this crap off of me," and then just kind of punches somebody in the face. That's what I want to see.
It's funny because if you need to find the missing link between Matrix and Hellboy, this is the movie, man.
Yeah,
this is the movie.
Absolutely, man. But I don't know that there were a lot of people looking for that missing link. But if they were, congratulations. Sean found it for us.
Well, you haven't been reading the emails, Bruce.
That's true.
We get flooded with that.
With those, where is it? I can almost see the connection.
Show me the link.
It's quite a tsunami. I don't know.
Tsunami.
But, when did The Matrix come out?
1997,
because it comes out during it's the same year Phantom Menace comes out.
No, 99.
It is 99.
Yeah,
so
because I think Blade hit the theaters before Matrix did, right? The first Blade.
Oh, you know what? We had this conversation during episode 7. It did come out before Matrix.
Yeah.
And then, and then we thought there was all this Matrix influence. Well, now we can put to bed all those arguments we had about Blade and its influence on and from the Matrix, because here it's pretty clear that they wanted to capture some of that lightning in a bottle that Matrix did.
Well, and here's the thing. Now, and Sean mentioned it, but I kind of go the opposite direction. I think like some of the action is good. A lot of it's garbage. A lot of it just feels like it's we're standing back, and I'm going to give you a lot of two-shot, but it's not like the two-shot in martial arts movies where it's like, here's your 2-shot, here's your nice wide 2, and I'm going to let these guys go so you can see the talent that's involved. You know, Jackie Chan is going to fight this other guy, and you're going to see all of it, and that's how cool it's going to be. This is more, it's a lot of standing and a lot of shooting. This is like, and I hate this comparison because you hear it in stupid critics that have never played a video game in their entire life, and they just go, oh, it's like watching a video game. This one is like that. This one is like watching a video game that you're not playing. And
or even not even a cutscene, you know, not even where they have graphics that they could work on, but stuff that has to go on the fly. Do we have some more positives before we start to get into the long list of things maybe that we felt came up short before I go on about the graphics?
The makeup is good. The makeup is really good.
Yeah.
The design of everything is really good. But
who was the actor that played Nomak? Was that actor anyone?
You would recognize him, but he's not like he's a character actor. He's not anyone.
I thought he did a good job.
Yeah.
What was that?
Luke Goss is the guy's name.
Luke Goss. I thought he did a good job. Now, I really did like him better than the other bad guys, you know, that were given to like. I mean, even Ron Perlman, I don't consider him like one of the bad guys because he's working with the team till the end. But I liked him better than any of the bad guys in the first Blade movie. I can say that. And he had a nice look about him, too. The makeup was good and the scar on his chin. And I'll swear, with his hood up and his face somewhat disfigured at times, it kind of reminded me of Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool without the mask on.
Oh, that's funny because I kept thinking of his dad as Emperor Palpatine.
That even works better, man.
I'm afraid this Death Star is fully operational.
Yeah, outside of Hellboy 2, you probably haven't seen anything he's been in.
Yeah, you know, that's another thing too is that the lawyer, the vampire's lawyer, with the blonde hair there wearing the suit, that guy plays Rasputin in Hellboy, for God's sake. Just over and over
you may not have noticed because of all the makeup and everything, but the guy that played Reinhold played Hellboy.
Get out of town.
Yeah. And I want to know, does Hellboy blush?
That's a good that's the good thing about being around Perlman, though, is that you could slap on 80 pounds of pancake makeup and he still looks like Ron Perlman.
Yeah.
You know, they put all this crap on me, but I still look the same. What's going on? People are going to think the color on the television is just bad.
Now I'm just an old Jew.
Oh, man. I'm also... I would say I would go on the record as being a pretty big Chris Christopherson fan.
I think I think this is several times that you've mentioned this. Big Chris Christopherson fan.
I don't know that this was one of his brightest moments in his career. So I'll just say that.
Alice doesn't live here anymore. Blade 2. They're all pretty close to the same thing as far as I'm aware.
And I'm going to go ahead and start transitioning us into some negative stuff because honestly, that's where the conversation lies. Right, guys?
Absolutely.
And the first thing I'm going to say is I like Chris Christopherson. I like him a lot, like I just said. But did they have to use every blow dryer in Europe on his hair? I've never seen him with a blowout hairdo like that before.
Well, first of all, and I'm not going to blame this on Chris Christopherson. You're going to hear this a lot. David Goyer is just like, if there was like, I believe whenever they had the script to Blade 2, they would turn the page and there would be a whole honey baked ham right on the next page as they turned every page. This movie is awful with ham-fisted, horrible dialogue that is just like, it might as well have said, Whistler decides to give some exposition and just throw it in there because my gosh, it is terrible.
And, it undercut the first Blade movie by bringing Whistler back. You know, that was part of the strength of that first movie, and the ending was that Whistler died, and then they brought him back, and the way they brought him back, I could go with it, but he doesn't really need to be there. You know, they just brought him back to, I don't know, to bring in the Seastaff fans that are out there, I guess, in 2002.
Highly underestimating how many kids love Chris Christopherson.
Not only that, you just hopped over a brand new nickname in the Leslie verse, which is Seacross.
And the funny thing is, I think he spells it with a K. So
he does actually.
But
K-Cross.
I still can't get over the fact that in a movie made in 2002. What?
Let's see you with a K-Cross fan club, and then there comes a little card and everything that he puts in his pocket.
But anyway, so they've got a movie made in the 21st century, a post-millennial movie that feels entirely like a 90s movie with a guy who was a star in the 70s with a hairdo that belonged to a lady in the 80s. So you got a lot of decades to choose from. So there's something for everybody. That's what you call a 4-quadrant movie right there.
Do you think that he walked on the set every day and he was like, at least on Heaven's Gate, all we did was take down United Artists?
This is the end of my career right here.
I survived Heaven's Gate. I'm not going to survive this one, guys. Go
what
on without me.
What a sunset into the world that I'm leaving here, coming out of Blade 2.
Let me jump in here. Because to me, I know, Bruce. I know that you're the thing that you hate most about this movie is Goyer. There's no mistaking it. You do. For me, I think everyone does a very spectacular job with what they're given, and they are not given much by Goyer's dialogue, with the one exception of Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes is so bad in this movie. He has clearly done the jump off the cliff at this point where, you know, like when I get into Stallone stuff, like you can tell in the 80s where just how whacked out Stallone is at the time where they're shooting Cobra and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is his time to be the biggest whack job in Hollywood. You can sense it coming off the screen. I don't want to see this movie again, but what I want to see is a behind the scenes of the making of Blade 2 and Blade 3.
Ooh,
and I
how
gotta
about how about we have a counter on screen every time of how much gambling debt he has during any particular scene, so we can judge his mood by how much money he lost on the ponies that week.
And then on the other side of it, you have what he owes the IRS.
Ding,
So you
ding,
have
ding, ding. Oh gosh.
And I've got a feeling,
looking
too,
good.
that Wesley Snipes had to write a lot of his own one-liners because even Goyer wouldn't do some of this stuff, I think.
I don't know about all of that, but he
But-
is just like, he is slogging through this like he just is barely aware that he's there.
He does not care about this movie one iota. And I think that's why he is now pushing for them to get Blade back into the Marvel Universe, is because he wants to show everybody, hey, I can actually do this.
If I gave a crap and actually started to do something, maybe it might actually be worth a darn.
If you had the Wesley Snipes from, and forgive me for this because it seems so dopey, but if you have the Wesley Snipes from Major League where he is truly, there's a spark there to him as Willie Mays Hayes. There's something special about him.
He's
there.
having fun with it.
Yeah.
And I
You
would
can
say he
tell
was
that
really
he's
good in
enjoying
White
it.
Men Can't Jump.
He's great in White Men
Yeah.
Can't Jump. But from White Men Can't Jump to Blade 2, something happens where he is Bruce Willising the crap out of this movie, where he does not want to be there. You can tell the second they call cut, he's walking. He doesn't. The only thing that he likes doing in this movie is his high kicking.
And he doesn't even want to do that by the time they get to the third one. But I don't want to get ahead of us here.
And cut. Do you guys have a Subway sandwich I could have?
It is so annoying watching this movie because it feels like you've got Del Toro at the helm here, and this feels like it could have been. Well, you know, I can't even say that because when I first saw this movie, I was like, well, that was surprisingly good.
Yeah.
I like this movie more than I liked the first Blade, which I liked considerably. You know, when I walked out of there, when you see this movie now, though, all I can see is, oh, Wesley Snipes is crazy here.
Now, when did Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon come out?
2000?
I'm going to the IMDb, Vamp Boys.
Because I
Vamp.
feel like it would have been before this, even if it was just a little bit before this. But I have to think that some of that really poor quality CGI, and you know, we
Boom! Adam's on point again.
so we derided a little bit some of the CGI in Spider-Man, and I talked about how the absence of motion capture at the time was showing through in Spider-Man. Well, it's really showing through in this, where like legs seem to expand and contract when they're in motion, and it's like when he's doing his backflip, he's about 7'2", and then he lands and he's back to the 5'10" Wesley Snipes height. But I have to think wire fu, you know, like the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon style wire fu would have worked pretty good in this movie, better than the CGI we got. Probably wouldn't have been any more expensive.
Here's the thing. Well, that requires so much training to do, and if there's anyone in this film who could have done it, Donnie Yen was the answer.
Absolutely, but don't forget that also this is a testing ground for him.
Yeah.
He is literally testing to see what he can do and what he can't do to get to Hellboy. He really is.
Yeah. Because it's like, let's stretch the limits of CGI and see what I can do with this stuff. And here's the thing. At first, I was just like, oh, gosh, because when they're doing the first big fight scene against the guys in the Court of Owls, kind of stuff that's going on there, fighting in front of all the lights and everything, I'm looking at some of it and going, oh, gosh, the CG kind of stinks and everything. But the more it goes on, the more I kind of am okay with it.
And you know, there's like one or two moves. Like there's some move where Wesley Snipes basically is able to fly for a couple of seconds, and that really is jarring. And because that one part is jarring, you just lump all the rest of it into that. You know, you sort of write off the whole scene because of this one particular move where he sort of defies the laws of physics and flows around. And like I said, if they wanted to do that with Wire Fu, it would have at least been a little more artistic. And you know, I don't know how far gone Wesley Snipes is by the time Blade 2 is made, but at the time Blade 1 was made, he was, you know, a martial artist, and I think he was athletic enough he could have handled a little bit of Wire Fu, or they could have brought in a stunt double, you know?
Yeah, but there's a couple of those perhaps, but there's so many other ones, again, where Del Toro does some things with the camera that's outside of CGI absolutely just impossible to do.
And I'm okay with that. You know, I'm okay with some of it, but I like some of the approaches that Del Toro has taken later, you know, in some of his later career choices, not all of them, but to use CGI as a last resort and not your first option. I like it when folks approach things that way.
Well, yeah, but I mean, look at all the other scenes where he's just shooting people and he's just standing. That's all he's doing. It's called, if I want Wesley to get 2 feet off the ground, we're going to have to CGI his butt to do so.
There is a part of that, too, that some of it might be a lack of enthusiasm from Wesley Snipes, but I also think there's a part of it where he thinks he is Blade, and Blade was such a big hit that now when Blade's fighting somebody, he has to look like he doesn't have to exert himself, because he's telling, you know, Guillermo, he says, no, Blade's bad, man. He's bad. He won't even break a sweat fighting these 9 guys. So I'm just going to have him hold his sword still inside of the scabbard and just move it slightly up and down just to show how bad Blade is.
I wouldn't put that past him of being one of those people that just goes, hey, look, I've been with this character since the beginning. It's like, you've done one film, pal. But I've been with this character since the beginning, and I know what this character would do, and it's like, I wouldn't be shocked if that came up.
I also felt like there was some heavy, like, I think that whatever I would have thought was cool when I was 14 is what Wesley Snipes thought was cool when he was making this movie. So I also feel like there's this part, because I could see me and my friends or my cousins playing a game and doing this very thing. But that part where they reveal the double cross by Scud, by Norman Reedus, I feel like originally Blade finds out he's double crossed, and then he has to fight against the people in the room and eventually get to Scud and kill him. But then Wesley Snipes goes, nah, that guy couldn't fool Blade. Blade's too smart for him. He'll just say, I've been on to you, and I'll blow him up.
But here's
that's a good first of all, that's a really great Wesley Snipes impression.
Dead on. I thought he was in the room with me.
That was my Irish Wesley Snipes.
So you're reminding me of 2 things here, Bruce. One is that if you are a 13-year-old boy in 2002, this is the greatest movie that's ever been made.
Yeah.
But it was rated R.
Yeah,
that's why.
That's exactly why I watched every rated R movie ever when I was 13.
There's just the amount of violence, there's just the amount of cursing and stuff to where you're just like, if you're like 13 years old, you're just like, this is the most BA thing I've ever seen in my life.
And
yes.
Let's be fair, Sean. When you and I were 13, PG movies would be R now.
That's true.
That is true. So that's one thing about this movie is that you're 13. He has these awesome glasses. You would think to yourself, some boys would think to themselves, man, I just wish that my mom would have gotten bitten by a vampire when she was pregnant.
Wouldn't it be dope?
Wouldn't that be the most awesome thing in the world? And I could listen to System of a Down as I killed all of these vampires.
You know what? That's a great
I was
segue
20
there.
and I thought that. When
I don't want to derail you if you got more to say, Sean. But I want to build off of that.
I do, because the other thing to this is that I think that we are going to get some really pissed off mid-30s guys here who are listening to this show, much like what happened with me, because I hate The Crow. I hate that movie so much. I hate it with a blinding passion. And I pissed off some people, and I heard about it. Like, how dare you? The Crow's awesome. And so I think that that's what's going to happen here, is that there's people who I'm fairly sure this might be some people's favorite movie. because it's if you are 13, this one's even better than the first one, and there is no one cooler in 2002 than Wesley Snipes.
Yeah.
And I understand that. And
you got all these dope makeup effects and everything, stuff that
Absolutely.
you haven't even seen before, man, because your mind just isn't on those other films that could do stuff like this. Del Toro is so out there and imaginative. We've seen all of his stuff now, so I mean, not to say that, not to take away from it, but it's a slightly old hat now to where you see something you're like, oh, Del Toro did this, because clearly it's got that kind of air about it. Back in 2002, we didn't have that reference point like we do today.
Well,
Right,
I'm
and
pretty sure when I was 13, my favorite movie was Short Circuit, and it's not my favorite movie now. So sometimes you let go of stuff.
Johnny 5 is alive, baby.
I don't believe you. We do
It
not.
was
I
all
do,
about the nice software scene.
I
And my
do-
parents wouldn't let me see Bolero.
I do not believe you. I do not think that Short Circuit was ever your favorite movie. Weekend at Bernie's, maybe.
It was a good one, man. It was a good one.
Mannequin, maybe.
Wayne's World was mine for a long time.
Why wouldn't it be? It's hilarious. The first Wayne's World movie is awesome.
Yeah.
So
It's no Bill and Ted, though.
who are you telling, friend? So
And
here-
I'm going to say something controversial. Don't care for the Bill and Ted.
oh well,
There you go.
yeah.
Oh, man, to each his own.
Yeah, you don't like things that are cool. That's awesome.
No, I'm sorry.
So
just like
here,
Good Back to the Future is what I call a time travel movie, but it's just me.
oh no!
Boom, mic drop.
Look, I have no argument to that. Back to the Future is okay. So anyway, here's the thing, right? So I understand, guys. It's always guys, and maybe there's like the rando girl out there who's like, I really love Blade 2. It's my favorite movie. That could happen.
Well, that's just because of the very sexy Ron Perlman that the girls
I thought
like.
you were going to say
course.
Chris Christopherson. Either way, it works.
Potato, potato.
A little something for the ladies. so there's like, I get it, guys. I get it. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear it like I heard it for The Crow when we reviewed The Crow. I understand you really love this movie, but look at it from anyone else's perspective. If you look at this movie now, this movie is awful. You know what? Not awful. It's just not very good.
Yeah.
And back to The Crow, even Lin-Manuel Miranda sort of dumped on Sean's theory about The Crow a little bit too.
Yeah.
I shared that with Twitter. People go check out Sean's Twitter account to find that.
It's just one of those movies. It's like that person, that girl that I worked with 1,000 years ago, that The Shadow was her favorite movie because it was just in her wheelhouse at the time. This is one of those movies as well. I understand that, and that's cool. And if you like this movie, that's great. But look at it objectively. There is a lot of bad in this movie.
It's on Netflix right now as we record this. So if you've got Netflix, what the majority of folks out there do, watch it. Check it again, because if it's been a while since you've watched it like it was for us, it might hit you a bit different than it did. Now, if you don't want to ruin that memory, by all means, don't watch it.
It was really surprising to me how much I remembered this movie being better. Because I did like it. I liked it when it first came out. And it's not like I hate it now. There were some good things about this movie.
It's long. It's 2 hours.
It is.
This thing should be, if this was cut down to an hour and a half, it might be a lot more tolerable.
Here's one thing I'll say in its defense. I didn't feel that it was overly long. They keep plenty happening. It's not like there were any long lulls per se.
Things happen, but they're, and God bless, but they're boring. Some of these fight scenes are boring. Maybe they're 2002 good, but they're 2016 sad and nappy.
And there's something about the Blade movies, all three of them, where it's always disappointing. The endings of these movies are always disappointing.
Now, Sean, I want to build on something you said earlier.
Oh,
you
please
said
do.
that maybe there were some 13-year-old boys who said, man, I wish my mom had been bitten by a vampire. Well, that makes me ask, does Damaskinos know how Blade was made? Because the guy in the first movie totally knew Blade's story. Because if you understand that Blade was simply made because a vampire woman was bitten, then just go to the hospital labor and delivery floor and make yourself an army of blades. You don't have to build them in test tubes and build a monstrosity that's going to kill you in the movie.
Start biting some pregnant pros.
He just walks up and goes, "Excuse me, pardon me. Which way to the maternity ward? I have to meet some people."
Hello, I am Dr. Acula.
Stay away from
It's the
Dr.
maternity
Acula. Precisely.
I need to draw your blood.
I don't trust that guy at all.
That was
is
another Wesley
something-
Snipes impersonation.
Dead on as usual, my friend. Dead on.
That's something that the comic book creators had the awareness to avoid. You know, they had him not only bitten by Dracula, but then later bitten by Morbius, so that it was this very specific set of circumstances that made Blade, and that was totally lost on Goyer. And they had Blade just being everything in the beginning, and there was nowhere for a power up to keep this trilogy interesting as time went by. And it also makes that big plot hole. Why is Damaskinos dealing with test tube babies when he could just go bite pregnant women? Which, you know, it's like a win-win. You get a baby Blade and you get to bite a pregnant woman. I imagine vampires like that.
So let me ask you this question then, Bruce. Are you trying to tell me that a bunch of guys who are freelance and just working really hard and trying to just do a good job did a better job of writing Blade's history than a trust fund baby who has had a silver spoon in his mouth his entire life?
Boom.
Yeah, I think that would be fair to say. In fact, talking about silver spoons, I think Ricky Schroeder could have done a better job writing
Oh,
this.
damn. Don't get me started now.
Ricky Schroeder is starting his new line of comic book
We're going to
films.
fall off a cliff if we keep going on Ricky Schroeder's. I'm not kidding.
I like Ricky Schroeder, man. Have you seen Lonesome Dove?
I do. I have met Rick Schroeder, and his name is Rick. You
Get
do
it
not-
right, jerkwad.
You better not call him Ricky, but he is a very good guy.
I appreciate the heads up, man.
I would say I would be like a Ricky's only if you're my boy.
I think if I saw him, just to be safe, I'd say, "Are you Mark Paul Gosselaar?"
Punch.
Guys, I am not kidding. I am about to fall off. I am about to fall off the ledge here. Let's continue.
We'll save that for a
please.
separate episode.
Someone else,
Okay.
or I'm going to start talking about Ricky Schroeder.
Let me
Let's
talk.
talk some. Oh, go ahead, please.
Let me drop some stuff here because I'm gonna say it because guess what? I don't know why the rest of the world isn't saying it, but I'm gonna say it. Norman Reedus sucks, everybody. Norman Reedus has always sucked. Norman Reedus is no bloody good.
I disagree.
I
I
disagree
think he's
as well.
terrible.
I've seen him in 3 things, and I liked his performance in all 3 of them.
He's horrible in this movie. He doesn't do much. I don't consider the guy a great actor by any stretch of the imagination. I want somebody to point me to something where he does some acting because all he does is
he's supposed to be playing an upstart punk in this movie that's unlikable, and he does a good job of that.
Yeah.
I thought I'm one of those Boondock Saints fans. Having said that,
oh, I
haven't
should
seen
reach
it
to
in
this internet and
years.
choke you.
I haven't seen it in years, but I remember enjoying the movie, and I do like The Walking Dead, and I like Daryl just fine there. So I've seen him in 3 things. I upvote him on all 3.
I'm just saying he doesn't play anything different than the guy who he plays. That's it.
Yeah, you're being controversial, Adam, right now because I see the look on your face.
but his-
I'm not. Look. I
That's
100%.
exactly
all
what
3
you're
movies.
doing.
I 100% believe it though. I don't care for him in anything that he does.
Then don't care for him. But he's completely serviceable in what he's doing. You know, if you need a guy who's kind of a good-looking dirtbag, you bring in Norman Reedus.
If I need a guy to say Holmes enough times, I guess that's perfectly fine for
And
me.
once again, that email address is heromoviepodcast@gmail.com.
And I'll tell you why
letters
you're wrong.
regarding Adam hates Daryl Dixon.
Don't care. I hope he dies.
Oh my word!
Just to
controversial Adam.
I'll be
That's
honest.
what we're at
that
right
bit.
now.
Half of it is getting at the Walking Dead people, but
Of
half of it
course.
does come from an honest thing of like I look at him and I go, I don't see what other people are seeing.
Look.
The guy does nothing.
Buddy, I get it. You're talking to the guy who's constantly at every turn slamming the lady who played Mary Jane in Spider-Man. I mean, I get it. I totally get it. But, you know, to each his own. I mean, I can't stand Bette Midler. I look at her, I'm like, nope, absolutely not.
Well, let me ask you this. So, like, another thing that bugged me is just like is like you said, the double fake out, you know, towards the end there. Why doesn't he blow up the guy he knows he's probably going to have a problem with? Why does he wait to blow up the human? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I feel like they didn't know where the scene was going until the last minute, because I honestly think they probably filmed the scene where they take it out of Reinhold's head, and that's where Wesley Snipes goes, no, this isn't going to work.
Is this during the writer's strike?
So, no, I don't think so.
This was the cause of it.
Well, they're just like, have you seen Blade 2? We all quit.
I'm out.
But no,
Now,
this feels
Sean,
like he was
I know
writing,
you've
like
done a
Goyer
little
was
bit of
writing on a
writing.
typewriter, and then he got to a point where he was just like, oh, shoot. Wait a minute. Now we'll write back into, no, it was a failsafe. That's the ticket.
See, I think the script they gave to Wesley Snipes was kind of like a Mad Libs.
just fill in little spots here, and then Wesley just takes it on to the house. No, I get that.
Purple meatloaf. But anyway, a couple things about writing I want to ask you, because Sean, I know you've written your fair share of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And, I've dabbled in a little bit of comic book writing on my own. And some of these names are just classic faux pas for a writer. First off, Nomak. That's not a real good choice. Did that bother you at all that they called the bad guy Nomak?
I'm guessing it was one of two things. It's either an insider joke with Goyer or Del Toro, or that it's something where, what Goyer does where he sees someone's name and he just pulls it for no reason.
Well, it's, as far as I can tell, it's an original name, but it just doesn't work because when you look at these kind of properties, Nomak is so easy to confuse with Omak. It's so easy to confuse with Korvac. It's so easy to confuse with Kovacs. There are just so many names that are all so similar that, there's no reason you couldn't call this guy Lars. You know what I mean? Why go with that Nomak? I don't know why it was so, he must have thought Jared Nomak was just a cool name, because I think he could have just as easily been Jared Yar, Jared Lars, Jared Olvik. There are lots of better names, I think, for him to use than Novak. And then Damaskinos, man, is that not about 3 syllables too much for that guy?
I need the Greekish sounding vampire name you can find.
Well, it's weird because it seems like they're going for like a Dirty Dozen kind of a thing where everybody has names like, Donnie Yen is Snowman, and you have Priest and Lighthammer and Rush and like that kind of thing. And so because they had those names, they were like, well, we can have a couple of confusing ones because you're going to know these people's names.
Yeah.
But Damaskinos could have been just as good as Davros, or it could have been just as good as Damascus. But once you get that Damaskinos, you're making me not even want to care what it is. And also, this would probably be a good time to point out that there's nothing wrong with going Dracula in these movies. It's public domain.
But isn't that who they're fighting in the third one is Dracula?
You can fight him more than once. He's Dracula.
Sure.
Fight Super Dracula in the third one.
You've already got me thinking of Davros being in a Blades movies, and that sounds amazing. Where's that movie at?
I would like to see D'Artagnan fight Blade.
You know what? D'Artagnan would have been a better name than Damaskinos. Damadopoulos I could have gone with better than Damaskinos.
Belky Bartakamus.
Oh,
Who cares?
But I got those names, Nomak and Damaskinos, wrong so many times in my head, writing notes and things that I just realized those, in my opinion, were just not good writing. It's almost like trying too hard on something that's not as important as you think it is. You want to be, once again, the 14-year-old, when he comes up with a name for his imaginary Dungeons and Dragons, it's going to be something ridiculous like Nomak Damaskinos Por Favor V or something.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like here.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, Adam, thanks for the visual of thinking of Blade is walking down this alleyway. It's like completely quiet and creepy and stuff. And there's like the fog machines going. And then Blade's like, who is that? And then at the very end of the other end of the alley, you hear, don't be ridiculous.
Balky.
Oh, you're so silly. Blade, no. This
Cousin Larry.
Cousin Blade. I would have watched that movie so bad.
Originally, the movie Short Circuit wanted Bronson Pinchot to play the Indian guy.
Man.
Well,
Back to my Short Circuit.
They just got another white guy to play him instead.
Yeah. Fisher Stevens is no Balky Baltakamus.
Yeah, get with it. So before we get down to reviewing this whole thing and giving you our final grades and everything, we got to find out how this movie relates back to one of the most magnanimous men in Hollywood history, Sylvester Stallone.
Adam, thank you so much. I have a prepared statement.
Oh, okay.
Way back in episode 7 of HMP, we reviewed the original Blade. That was so long ago we weren't even doing shows every week. That was so long ago I hadn't even been in the same room with Bruce yet. That was so long ago both Adam and myself were still married. Not to each other, of course, because he could do better. The Stallone connection at the time was Wesley Snipes, and yes, it could have been better, but I was new and stupid like the rookie cop in every Jerry Bruckheimer movie. Chris Christopherson plays Whistler in the Blade series, a character which, in my opinion, is far cooler than that of Blade himself, and I'd love to see a standalone Whistler movie, but 12 people would see it because I can't be sure, but I think just looking at Chris Christopherson makes teenagers fall asleep. I don't really know because I'm at the age now where the only thing I care less about than what teenagers are thinking is poetry written by teenagers. I had a girlfriend in high school who fancied herself a poet, and while the memory is hazy, what I can remember are far too many moments of her reading aloud her angsty, clearly thesaurus-checked poetry as I worked very hard on my fake smile and at times my fake concerny face. But to get back to Chris Christopherson, I like him in these Blade movies, even though I know you guys can't stand him. I like him. And I like him way more now that he's old, and with each passing day, he looks more and more like Mama from Throw Mama from the Train. Chris Christopherson was also in a movie called I See You, which starred none other than the actor I like to think of as an in-shape Paul Sorvino, Sylvester Stallone. The movie had no chance in hell of making any money because it also starred the kiss of death to any movie, Charles S. Dutton. You put that guy in the movie, your movie's tanking. Yes, I know he's in Rudy. Look him up on IMDb. He has killed more franchises than David S. Goyer.
Ooh.
Boom! It feels like Hollywood has finally figured it out that Charles S. Dutton is the kiss of death. That if you put that guy in your movie is going to disappoint. Looking through his credits, I was happy to learn that Charles S. Dutton was also in Crocodile Dundee 2, where he played a character named Leroy Brown, which might be the greatest name for a movie character ever. So there you have it, HMPers. This week's Stallone connection. Now, Paul Hogan and Linda Kozlowski, let's rate this movie so I can get back to that arm wrestling championship.
You know he wrote Bobby McGee.
Of course we do.
I do.
Yeah, man. So that is a talented guy. He can be both Whistler and the Bobby McGee writer.
Hey, you know, it takes all types.
It's called range.
Yeah. So let's get down to it. Here on Here Movie Podcast, we don't have stars. We don't have letter grades. That's just silly. In fact, we have something even sillier. It's called the Patented Robin Rating System. You can find that by going to facebook.com/Here Movie Podcast, writing up a big thing there, and there's up right at the top of the screen. And Bruce, what is your Patented Robin rating for Blade 2?
You know, I didn't hate it, despite the fact that we pointed out a whole lot of weaknesses. I will say we've seen a lot worse than this in our 3 years of superhero movie watching. I think Del Toro's visual flair went a long way with me. I pointed out that some of the CGI seems very dated to me. And let's make no mistake, the story's garbage. You know, it seems like we've already said, a 14-year-old's list of things that are cool. But cool creatures and extreme violence is probably just enough to redeem any story deficiency. So I am going to give it a Damian Wayne.
Okay. Keenan, what do you got?
Well, I don't like. I guess I don't like this movie more than Bruce doesn't like this movie, because I wouldn't dare give this thing a Damian Wayne. It was super disappointing to me, and maybe it was just the shock of me remembering it better, but. To me, this is a Stephanie Brown all day. It's interesting to watch this movie for a couple of reasons. The most interesting thing is, Del Toro's trying to figure out how to make Hellboy with this movie. But Hellboy is 1,000 times more interesting a character than Wesley Snipes as Blade. And that's the case. And Blade is in almost every dang shot of this movie, and he does not want to be there, and neither do I. So it's a Stephanie Brown.
Yeah, I've been going back and forth on all this, trying to figure out where it kind of goes. Part of me even thought for a second, hey, maybe we'll go Carrie Kelly and think like, hey, this is kind of a certain for a group of people. But honestly, the more I kept thinking about it, the more I kept going at it, I'm just like, I got to go Stephanie Brown too. I kept teetering for a while, just going, man, Del Toro's got a lot of really interesting stuff here as far as makeup goes. You can see he's almost getting into his own. He's not quite there yet. Honestly, I think to get to where he fully, truly needs to be doesn't really happen until Pan's Labyrinth. I think that's when he truly becomes himself for the very first time.
True.
Though Hellboy was, definitely a strike in that right direction. But I think Pan's Labyrinth's where it got to his kind of zenith there. But overall, I just, wildly disappointed from what I remember from back in 2002. I'd have told you that this was the best of the Blade series and everything, and I'd put it at least at par or maybe even slightly there under the first one, because the first one at least has a more definable villain, has more, things that are a little bit more interesting to it. I like the addition of the kind of like crazy-mouthed super vampires or whatever. But by and large, it's pretty much boring. And we didn't even get to this. I've been wanting to talk about it. Why were there no subtitles for we watch at least 5 minutes worth of vampire talk in this where we don't know what's going on? Or was that just what Netflix was doing to me?
I don't know. I don't remember.
I don't think that David Goyer bothered to translate it in the script.
I don't either, because I don't
think anybody knows what they were saying.
I think
so
they were
you
just
can make your own subtitles.
Yeah, it's like going to another country and watching a soap opera where, I don't know what's going on here. They're talking back and forth in a language that I certainly don't understand.
Those hot Mexican ladies sure are mad at each other.
They're mad at stuff, and at least in those shows, you do have those hot Mexican ladies to look at. With this, we got two people in just these Nosferatu-looking outfits doing some sort of Shakespearean crap going on, but we sure don't know what it is. I'm sure part of me, back in 2002, thought that was so dope how, they don't have any of the subtitles. Look how cool it is, because we wouldn't know what they're saying. Why would we have to know what they're saying? Because they're vampires and we're not. But no, today that doesn't work. That sucks, and it's terrible.
and I will say I did grade this on a little bit of a curve, because I gave the first Blade to Damian Wayne, and I couldn't give this one a lower one than I gave the first one. So I had to kind of stick with that.
Well, you got to the end of the year to change it. So
That's true. That's true.
You've got your mission. So next week, we're going to be going a little bit outside of the box here. Now, I know after that email, Marty, this is probably not what you want to hear, but we're going to be reviewing the first 3 episodes of the original Green Hornet television show from way back in 1966.
And Marty, let me tell you this, man. Here, if you can, hold on for as long as you can to that girl, because my kids now are old enough where it's not like having kids in my house anymore. It's like having the worst roommates you've ever had in your life. That's literally
Ones
where
that don't
we're
help
at.
pay any of the bills, but
They constantly need
all
money.
your crap.
They constantly need money. They're constantly complaining. I got to clean up after them all the time, and they leave their crap around all the time.
Yeah, I heard some. I don't remember who. It's been a while, but I heard some comedian describe kids as like having a hungry roommate who doesn't have a job.
That's about right. So we'll be reviewing the Green Hornet next week. So, they're up on YouTube, so you can watch those first 3 episodes for free. And, Blade 2 is on the Netflix there. So if you haven't watched Blade 2, I suggest you watch it again. Then write us an email and tell us how much it was as good as you thought or different from what you thought. So
I would actually like to hear someone's response who still really loves this movie. I would like to hear that.
Yeah, same here. So hearmoviepodcast@gmail.com. Don't know if you've heard that within this episode or not, but that's the email address that you can go to. Bruce, in the meantime, where can we find more of your work on the internet this week, sir?
Well, Heroes and Villains, we just recently released a Rick Jones episode, and I believe this Wednesday I'm finally going to have a Rorschach episode for people to check out. So that's one I've looked forward to doing for about 3 years. So I finally got around to it. And then Chubby Wizard is still there. It's still fat. It's still magical.
So is that Rorschach episode, is that going to be like a 15-parter?
That's what I was going to ask.
No, I got it fit into one long episode.
Wow, very impressive.
It's easy when there's only 12 issues of story to cover, and then the rest is just kind of commentary.
And he does read them all to you, which is weird, but it's very theater of the mind.
It is. It's like a service for blind people.
Yeah. He also wears the costume
on
while
that
he does
before
it, so.
Watchmen comic. I think that's the important one.
Oh,
the Brian Azzarello Rorschach comic.
Yeah, you want to get to the Watchmen baby stuff, the things that are important.
Yeah.
Of course. Watchmen babies.
Keenan?
You can reach me at Hero Movie Sean on Twitter. Also, I have another podcast I do with these two jags called The Preacher Podcast. It's pretty popular. You should check that out. And we also have another podcast that we do after Preacher Podcast, which is Preacher Podcast Word of Garth. Check that out as well. But you'll know more about that when you listen to Preacher Podcast, so you'll be fine.
Oh, so much hell from all the listeners. It's just like, I tell them, I'm just like, you don't even realize it's like, it kind of became, like the fact that we weren't supposed to mention it became a bit in and of itself, and we mentioned it more than we ever have before. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, I understand it, but that's just the joke. And maybe that email was even a joke by going, hey, by the way, you mentioned that too much. I hope that was really their thought, where they're just like, you're still mentioning it too much.
I think I'm going to start calling our regular episodes the Not Word of Garth edition.
Not Word of Garth. Welcome to the Not Word of Garth edition of Preacher Podcast. And, of course, my other podcast, The Film Find, at thefilmfind.com. There we review new release films every single week. It's going to be an interesting one this week. We got 2 new films. I forget what they are off the top of my head because I haven't slept a lot lately. But they're good. but I liked both of them, and whatever I can remember what they are.
Secret Life of Pets.
Yeah.
And The Guys Need a Wedding Date.
Yeah, I saw both of those. And they're both good. Even though I cannot remember their names at this present moment, I enjoyed them well enough to recommend them. So why don't you listen to that at thefilmfind.com. That's it, everybody. Until next week when we talk a little bit of Green Hornet action here. For Sean Keenan, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Goodbye, Marty, and maybe Evie.
Maybe.
Busted flat in Baton Rouge, waiting for a train, and I was feeling near as faded as my jeans. Bobby thumbed a diesel down just before it rained and rode us all the way to New Orleans. I pulled my harpoon out of my